Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome to our podcast. We're here at Heritage headquarters in downtown Phoenix, and I have a guest today that I think everyone's going to want to listen to, and it's Kelly Salloway, and you're with
Mike?
Perennial Films.
Perennial Films, that's
Kind of
right.
like perennial plants.
That's
we'll
right.
get into that. I'm sure there's a play on it.
Yeah,
but-
it's unusual for me to be in front of the camera. I'm always behind the camera, so it's a little different situation for me.
So I don't ask necessarily the questions that most people, how did you get into this line of stuff? What was your journey? Did you go to school for this? You grow up with the video camera in your hand? I mean, what?
Not
did
exactly.
You go?
No,
Okay, so
I
tell
came
us.
a little different route. I didn't go through film school, which is a traditional route. And most of the people on our crew are film school graduates and who came for it for 3 years. And my background is as an event producer. So I was doing big, giant events. I used to work for the IndyCar series.
Oh, wow.
And I traveled everywhere with the IndyCar series and then did a lot of things with cars and motorcycles. And I of course, ended up where I'm at in documentary because I specialize in unscripted formats. So anything that's unscripted.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. So that could be documentaries and docuseries, reality, docu-docs, all this. And I actually did a docuseries in Phoenix with electric scooters.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
So your docu-series are about anything that's just interesting? It seems like you're in this sustainable space right now with the last
that's
two
true.
that you produced.
Well, it
right?
is, you get there, however you get there eventually. But I've done lots of different projects, and some of those projects, it's different in unscripted and documentary. You're really looking at just what are great stories, what are great people to get, real things, real people, and I think that's what the storytelling is all about. But also why documentary is so compelling to people, and it is true stories. So I don't do narrative movies or sitcoms or things like that. So in my journey, I've done, I have a show on Discovery Plus and HBO Max right now that's about polygamous wives, in the FLDS up in Colorado City, Arizona. And like I said, I had one about electric scooters, and that's something that I came through. This whole sustainability journey has been going on a long, long time with me. And this was another producer I met through the Green Chamber of Commerce, and they were doing electric. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's it's kind of a combined of things that I've done in the past with motorcycles or cars, but now we're looking at electric, and that was a great series and really fun.
We've done with a company that I own, the commercial landscape company. We just transitioned to battery operated maintenance equipment across the board.
Great. Yeah.
So, that's got solar trailers that charge batteries and all the equipment, but the lawnmowers, the weed eaters, the blowers, and everything else. And it's cool to see because, it's got environmental impact, but realistically, it pencils out. It's more cost effective. I don't have to change oil. I don't have to worry about gas mixes and that kind of thing. And it's quiet. So
it's always nice when it's quiet.
Right. You don't have somebody waking you up at 5 a.m. with a lawnmower. But so some of this stuff is pretty similar when we talk sustainability. We're talking about new models that are change models, right? But they have to actually work.
Right. For people
to people from, you can't just push on it saying, hey, we're trying to save gas or this, that, or the other thing. They actually have to be, have a reason to them, which is, part of the big story, right? So where did you grow up? Are you a traveler?
No, I'm from Tucson, Arizona.
You're from here?
Native Arizona. Yes.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
But I've been everywhere. I lived in many exotic places like, Australia and Detroit.
Detroit's exotic.
Detroit's pretty exotic.
Well, it's unique.
When I worked with in motorsports. And in Australia, I did a lot of scuba diving. We did a lot of, which I love, and did a lot of save the ocean sort of things back then. And of course, I came back. But after working in IndyCar, I thought, it's a good place to be, because in that kind of business, you're gone, all summer, and you're home during the winter. And I'm like, I don't want to be in Michigan or Indianapolis.
Right. This is a good place to be in the winter.
Yeah.
Right?
So I had the opportunity to work with the producers for ESPN at the Speedway, and have always done a lot of production of components in the event production that I've done over the ages, and that's how I sort of got into production. And that's how I met one of my business partners and the film partners that I'm working with today on Perennial Films. I met Michael Johnson, who is the director of our feature film, which is called Prairie Prophecy. I met him 20 years ago, and we always tried to work together. And then we finally got together on the current film that we're releasing this weekend, Prairie Prophecy. And that was about 2019 when we started this project.
So these are not long documentaries either.
Well, with the beer movie is a whole other story that we can talk about. But the documentary Prairie Prophecy is about Wes Jackson, who is the founder of the Land Institute. And really, he's kind of a founder of a lot of things that we're talking about today. A lot of your guests, I look at the guests, I look at all of the topics, and I'm like, he might have coined those phrases to start with when he started his work in the 1970s. And so Prairie Prophecy is about his life, but it is also about natural systems agriculture and
permaculture.
Permaculture.
Is what he kind of explained.
He's kind of, when we say natural systems, we're just saying, it's about emulating nature. What would nature do? And those are things that seem obvious maybe to us. And that is, polycultures instead of monoculture, and perennials instead of
land
annuals.
management, the whole thing. What does a producer of a documentary do? What's the difference? Do you write it? Do you direct it? Do you act in it? What does a producer do? I think producers,
we're like.
I always wondered, what is a producer?
What's a producer?
Isn't that the money person?
Executive producers are known as the money people. So an executive producer, and in our case, we have about 4 executive producers. And they're the people that are responsible for the big picture, the overall, and that includes getting funding, which is always a tough part about making movies. Right. And then the producers are more like the hands on the ground. So like people that are on hands workers. So producing is like, we're like the party planners, I guess. But also, you think about an architect, or if you're building a house, that architect's kind of like the screenwriter. And the producer is definitely a general contractor. Oh, and so you're like the general contractor.
You want to make sure that
so you're hiring everybody, the people. So in some cases, the producers actually hire the directors, and but we hire the crew, and we do the logistics to get all those crew people out to wherever. But when I explain it to just anyone, I just say, well, my job is like getting a lot of people at this, all to the same place at the same time. It's not that easy.
No. What do they say though? That if you can get all the cattle running in the same direction at the right time, they call that a stampede, right? And that's
it. Yeah,
because if they're not moving in the same place,
when they were talking about herding cats, it's like producing like nailing Jello to a tree. That's what we say.
Sure. Okay, so the specific projects that you've done over the last few years, you said that the Prairie Prophecy actually started in COVID.
Oh yeah, before COVID, it started long before. Michael Johnson and I and a lot of his crew, and that's all out of San Diego. Talked about doing an environmental project, but it was always going to be based on agriculture and what Wes calls the 10,000-year-old problem of agriculture and how impactful that is on the earth. Sure. And so it was always going to be about agriculture. And so we thought, well, we're going to make this a big Planet Earth series and go around the world and look at what different practices that different places have with agriculture and all the impact over the years. And it's a big project that we still want to do, by the way. We still like to do that. And while we're doing that, he ends up meeting Wes Jackson is just enamored, and then meeting all the people at the Land Institute in Salina, Kansas, who are from all over the world, who are working on these problems, about agriculture and how to save the world.
Right.
And we, somewhere along that time, it was said, well, somebody should do a movie about Wes Jackson. And that's one of those things where it's like, somebody should do it. And you're like, and you look around, and you're the only people that are there, right? You're there. It's like, oh, it's us.
Okay.
And, as soon as that sort of was decided, then it was very easy because we got funding right away. Because we had funders and a foundation that was like, oh, yes, that has to be done. And so it's a feature film about him, but also, some of his influences, and then people that he has influenced over the years, which are just, scores of people that are out there.
He was kind of the pioneer when they coined that whole permaculture concept in the 70s. And interesting. I've started before COVID writing what I thought was one book. It's now 4.
That happens.
But one of those books is the 7 Pillars of Agricultural Literacy, and it talks about the 10,000-year journey or whatever, and it talks. But he's in there, of course, because he's
a pioneer of it,
and the permaculture and that kind of thing. So your latest one, though, and this is going to get warm on us. But
this is more fun. This
one now. Do you produce this yourself?
No, this is from Patagonia. So there is a story behind this other short film, which is called Beer Saves the World. So while we were producing,
I'm gonna open it, so.
Oh yeah,
let me distract you.
Got to get that sound.
Okay. Oh, perfect.
So it's part of the journey of covering Prairie Prophecy.
It's delicious, by the way. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. Now we can go on.
Yeah.
So part of this journey for Prairie Prophecy and trying to cover a lot of content, because we shot over, maybe over 3 years and even longer, but we had tons of content. And in that, we had always intended to do what we call bonus content. And you see that on, with different movies, Kiss the Ground, you can go to their website and you see like they've done all these other movies and all these short movies that are supplement.
Part of
they're part of the story.
Shooting, yeah.
And so we had always thought, well, we definitely want this movie to live on, later, in later years, and people could go and see, that the thing about Kernza is so interesting, but there's only a few minutes about that in this feature, because you never have time to put everything in there, right?
Well, your focus has to be focused, right?
Right. So we said, well, we did have a plan that we would do a short film, about Kernza, because it's so unique, and that is a perennial grain that was, we'll say, it's naturally occurring. It's out on the prairie, and is something that we'll say.
And is Wes actually growing that? And that's where you saw it?
We saw it at the Land Institute. It's the first time that we saw these massive root systems and the poster, and then we saw them growing it. And then we realized that this was just a massive project that was, was so interesting on its own. And so because Kernza is a perennial grain, that's what's great about it. And it's a naturally occurring grass, so it's just the same as wheat would be growing on the prairie.
It is a wheat grass,
it's a wheat grass, right?
Technically, yeah.
But because it's a perennial instead of an annual, then it keeps growing every year. And so what you do is you can cut off the top, and on that top you can take that grain and you can make the same things that you do, with wheat. So you can make bread or pasta.
So how does the bread? I've grown a lot of alternative wheat brands, right. Here we have 2 different Native American seeds that I've used.
So like the Sonoran white wheat?
Sonoran, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but they were delicious.
Yeah, if you've ever had a pretzel over at Arizona Wilderness, then it's made out of that the Sonoran white wheat. And then that is proof right there that print. Amazing.
We had an urban garden farm, Agave Farms on Central, an Indian school, is about 17 acres. And one year I decided I wanted to try the wheat. I grew it. Next year the birds got it, so they figured it out. But that year we grew it, and we also had lots of beehives. So we blended that with the honey, and that was an amazing bread. It was so crunchy. It was like, that's all I needed to eat. That was like a full meal.
With Kernza, they've just been they have developed it at the Land Institute.
So it's an ancient grain,
right? And so right? And then they moved that all of the agronomy and a lot of the research and science is being done at the University of Minnesota.
Okay,
and they're growing Kernza in Minnesota. But as it's gone along, this has been 40 years in the making, right? Because we're trying to get that yield, the top of the grain, to be big enough so it's worth it. Basically, worth it to grow it and worth it for the farmers.
They're hybridizing it.
So they're hybridizing it, and it takes about 5 years every time they hybridize it, and they have the leading scientists doing this. And in the meantime, they're having, they're getting farmers to grow it. And so what happened with the beer is that Patagonia, of course, and they're in business to save the planet. Patagonia, about 10 years ago, it was the founders. It was Wes Jackson and Yvon Chouinard getting together and say, and there was a sack of Kernza, and there's a legend after that. It's all legend that Yvon Chouinard took that sack of grain back to California and said, "Here you go. We're going to do something with this." And and then I guess they talked about what they would do. They do have a division of Patagonia called Patagonia Provisions, and they do all kinds of food. And so Provisions is the one who got into the beer business. And so they took that Kernza, they actually took it down the street to Topa Topa Brewery in Ventura and had them, do some experimenting with it and decided they could absolutely make beer out of it.
And this one is non-alcoholic, you said?
This one, yes.
But they do have an alcoholic beer, too.
Oh, yes, of course. Okay. So we've started with the alcoholic, and then...
This is really tasty, though. This is you really can't tell it's non-alcoholic.
We've got... what they did was they chose a handful of brewers across the United States that were really, people that were mirroring their values, that were organic. And really... out in our little beer movie, we have the brewers saying, out of the 9,000 or more craft brewers in the United States, only 50 are organic. So brewing completely organic. And one of those is Arizona Wilderness here in Gilbert and Phoenix.
Okay.
And so they went to these different spots, Topa Topa, a place, in Vermont, one place in, a couple places in Oregon. And one of the places chosen to brew this Patagonia beer was Arizona Wilderness. And so because they like to say they're more Patagonia than Patagonia because they're a very sustainable company. And they just took it right on. So when you go to Arizona Wilderness, you can buy it in Patagonia beer, Kernza grain beer that they make, and in a tap or in cans, and you can take them home with you. And they've been making it for a while. But like I said, now, it's starting to get where we have enough farmers that are out there, and Patagonia is providing surety to these farmers that if they grow this Kernza crop, that somebody will buy it. I mean, they will buy it to make beer. Yeah, well,
that's always the case when you have innovative crops.
Right. So
we were doing the same thing with hemp. My partner is out there today. I saw him, and we are doing tons and tons of field trials with different seeds, but you have to have end users,
right?
And you have to market it. Okay, so why does Kernza? How does that save the world?
Well, because it's a perennial grain, and because they are growing enough to make a difference. Like I said, it's gotten to be to a point, like I said, where that yield can make a difference. They are making bread out of it and pasta. There's places all in the Midwest right now, in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Kansas, where you have farmers growing it and then pasta makers making things out of it. And all of this is, towards that sustainability of trying to prove, one, that, perennial grains can, replace, those till.
Sure.
They have a saying with this is tastes great, less tilling. So this beer is from Deschutes Brewery.
Okay.
And Deschutes out of Bend, Oregon. And they're one of the bigger craft brewers.
I've had one of their beers.
Yeah, once or twice. Yeah. We might have had a fresh squeeze while we were at it somewhere.
So
Deschutes is the company that is big enough to just now in the last year take this Kernza beer and the recipe from Patagonia, and they're making beer and distributing it nationally, because until last fall you couldn't do that. You'd have to go to a local brewery. So Deschutes is doing that. They do make this is the Kernza Golden Brew, and it is a non-alcoholic beer. So they do a non-alc and an alcoholic version of this. And but right now you can just buy it around town at Whole Foods and Sprouts.
Or go to Wilderness.
Yeah, you can go to Wilderness and buy theirs. It's Patagonia beer.
I want to try the pretzel.
And I think they're going to be in Total Wine. They just started this Earth Month. They're going to be in Total Wine. And so now you'll be able to get Kernza beer and save the world.
There it is. So I got a question. I haven't visited, and I've read books on Wes. I think he wrote a book early on in his when he had started the permaculture concept and all. Is it all rain-fed agriculture, or does he?
Not necessarily, yeah. But what you see in the Kernza fields, and they're relying mostly supplement on in some places if they have a drought. But one of the reasons that this Kernza roots and the perennials are used, because those are the root system is something that's drought resistant. So wind resistant, drought resistant, all those things, and that root system,
they come back.
It comes back, and it goes so far down in the ground that it's not going to be affected by droughts as much as an annual crop. Sure. And
it's also helping with that everything going on in that soil. So now
that's what
nutrients can get down. It can hold water and a flash flood
sequester carbon.
Right. So that's a neat crop that he has. Okay. So this all just came from the initial filming out there.
That's right.
And it took, so I always wondered, what takes 5 years? I know, I shouldn't ask that because the books, I don't know if I'll ever finish them, right?
Yeah.
So I know it takes an awful lot. And you get out there and then you decide, you know what, I need a different aspect, or I need something else.
There's things that you do decide, you plan as much as you can. And and if you, once you're lucky enough to get funding, which, then you get into a pre-production mode, you plan as much as you can. Sure. And so if you're going to be shooting for a month, you're going to be planning for 2 months, right. With all that. And there's shots that you want to get.
Right.
I mean, we have shots.
You got to fly back and catch it first thing in the morning in the spring.
Well, we do. Right? We have shots in Kansas that are taken at the same place, and they're in the spring, and they're in the fall, and they're in the winter, and those are trips, to Kansas.
And people really looking will notice that, right?
They'll notice. I think everything that you put on the screen, and all of your efforts. Sometimes you don't know why a movie is really good or why a movie is really bad. You don't really know why it's good. You're just watching it and you're like, oh, this is really great. And those are all the processes that go into that. And that's the camera work by, we have an amazing, cinematographer, Jim Orr, who's our DP, and, getting those shots. And then later, in post-production, you're spending a year in post-production on this movie. And that is to get those shots, into an order. But then they're recolored, and then there's music and sound, and we have all natural sound effects in there. And if you can imagine, our sound guy Kevin, standing there with, to get a bird or a stream or whatever, and someone has to organize all that.
You got to pair it with what you're shooting and how you're cutting. Now, have you gone to all the film festivals like Sundance?
Oh.
And do you launch in any of those?
Yeah, what we're doing, we have a strategy for distribution, and distribution is important when you're making any movie. And when you're doing a documentary, it's really about finding, your audience. Who is the audience for this movie? And, obviously, this is, we'll say, a general audience. It's very much very popular in the Midwest. We're doing our, because people are farming culture. They either lived on a farm, or they grew up on a farm, or their parents did. And so they understand a lot more about it. They relate to all of these characters in this kind of movie. When we kind of decided, like last year, well, we have another year of production, post-production to get Prairie Prophecy done. that's where we decided to make this beer movie. And that's where I said we were going to do content about Kernza. And, although bread is, exciting, it's not as exciting as beer. And so last summer we just, kind of said, well, we're going to do something about Kernza. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this about beer. And then, of course, everybody else is busy. And they're like, yeah, okay. And so as soon as we started making this short film about beer, really started getting some attention because we started at Arizona Wilderness. And that's, because I had met Jonathan Buford, and I met him at Common Ground at a screening that was here in town. Yeah. And he was on the panel. And I was like, oh my gosh, that guy is amazing. And he should be in a movie. And then I was like, ooh, I guess we could do a movie about beer, and then I could put him in that movie, and then I'd have a great movie. Wow. So we started with him because we knew we had lots of footage about Kernza. We have footage of these giant trenches where we could expose these long routes and see all this stuff. Yeah, but you don't get to use all that content. You're like, well, this is what shows people what's going on under the ground, right?
Yeah, you got so much cool stuff you want to put it in there, but you can't.
Yeah. So when we started doing the beer movie, it was like, oh, okay. And actually, at that time is when Patagonia reached out to me. They were like, whoa, what are you guys doing over there? What's going on? I said, well, we're making this movie. It's called Beer Saves the World. And it's all about sustainable practices in brewing, but it's about Kernza. I said, and they knew that we were with, that we were doing the Wes Jackson movie, but Patagonia we hadn't really worked with. And they said, oh, that's great. They said, oh, can you show that at Climate Week in New York? And I was like, yes. We hadn't made the movie yet, but I was like, yes, yes, we can.
What year?
Yeah. Was that this next month? Right. So they invited us. So Patagonia and Patagonia Provisions in particular invited us to go to Climate Week. And so this short movie that we have, a 10-minute movie, actually premiered at Climate Week in New York. And there's our panel of our little 10-minute movie, and it's the CEO of Deschutes, Peter Skierbeck. It's Paul Lightfoot, who's the director of Patagonia Provisions. We have the CEO of Whole Foods and, the president of the Land Institute. All those people would be, of course, there. And so it was great for us because people could see.
Good exposure.
Great exposure, but also they could, it's pretty heavy. I mean, to go through Climate Week and and everyone who's working so hard to save the planet, to see something a little bit more lighthearted, because we're like, hey, beer saves the world. They're like, really? And so in the movie, we, they're like, can beer save the world? And we have, someone like Yvon Chouinard just chuckling. He just laughs in the movie. He's just like, not really. and then Paul Lightfoot saying, he's like, not on its own. We have to get, fossil fuels out of our food system.
There's so many different approaches.
There's lots of approaches and lots of people that get an opportunity to, to weigh in on a pretty heavy subject, but, while they have a beer in their hand, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a better way to do it. Everything's better with the beer. Interesting, because Joe and I started the climate resilience group here in Arizona. So we're the Arizona branch. Now you're going to have to join.
I have to join.
Exactly. But it's interesting. We have, with urban farming education, we have a education platform that's STEM related from preschool all the way through high school. And one of the things we want to be able to do is take climate and make that part of the feature of the program. So it's understanding the environment and ecosystems and what we're doing to the planet and how to come up with solutions. But I mean, what you're talking about is one little solution that's drinkable and enjoyable, but there's a lot of them out there, and it takes everyone's effort. And, so it'll be interesting to see. We're working now with Greenlight Solutions, and they want to do a documentary. I've never
tell them to call me.
Yeah, I've never done these documentary things, but it sounds laborious and
it's not as it's a lot more fun to watch them when they're on TV.
yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, and I love documentaries.
Yeah,
That's
and you know, we're really, it's kind of a golden age for docs right now, and it's a great business to be in because people do love documentaries. They
want to see real
they want to
content,
see
something
real
authentic,
people,
right?
something authentic. And we have so many ways to get content now that it's, you know, that any day or night, you know, you can put on Netflix. They have an entire library of documentaries. And I think, you know, everybody's like, why are they so popular? I'm like, well, one thing is I think they're better. I think they're better than they used to be because of, they just, you know.
You tell a story now.
But also technology is, you know, is also better. And so you're not getting a lot of talking heads and things. You've got people with, you know, you've got drones and, you know, remote cameras and all kinds of time lapse and lots of technology that really helps.
Didn't exist before.
Yeah, it didn't exist. And so you're not getting the after school special. You're getting a feature film motion picture. And so one of the reasons is they're better. And then they're, like I said, they're accessible. And then people, you know, who want to make documentaries, whether it's, you know, environmental or it's social justice, you know, it is accessible.
Things that are having a hard time nowadays.
Yeah.
But
it's accessible for people to make them. There are, you know, you can get out there and make a doc. And when it comes to distribution, you know, again, knowing your audience, you can figure out where's it going to go? It's like, you know, you have this group of people that are interested. In our case, this movie, like I said, when we're talking about, you know, doing a film festival circuit, you know, we're doing that with the beer movie. We're going to lots of different film festivals. We're bringing beer. We're bringing our posters and our stuff. And people are really an audience that's not exposed to environmental stuff that much. And with the feature, we'll be showing our feature at a couple of universities. You know, we don't care too much about the Sundance crowd, and that they're not going to be important to us. It's important to us to get in front of a lot of people in the heartland because they're interested in the subject.
Well, I think Joe's got you already lined up to do a show right here in Heritage headquarters.
Yes,
so that's going to be fun.
If people want to see a movie, that's going to be good.
Excellent, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming here today, Kelly. Thank you.
Let's do this.
Even better. Salute. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
That was fun.
The modern era is a very problematic era for planet Earth.
But only about 50 of the 9,700 craft brewers in the U.S. have USDA organic certification.
What did you say the plant was one more time?
Kernza plant.
Kernza.
Root systems grow to like 12 feet long.
Shift really came with Patagonia Provisions.
It turned out to be a pretty good idea.
What's the whole process?
The goal is to reward farmers growing food responsibly, but that doesn't work unless it's fabulous.
Introducing the fan and the consumer to Kernza, I think beer is a very good vehicle for that.
I do like Kernza. If it's acceptable, I would go with this 100%.
I like to live a healthy lifestyle, know what's going into my body.
And it tastes really good.
Now you don't see it and go, that's going to save planet Earth.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.